to the Unleash Success podcast, where we break down the secrets of success to give you real tools and strategies that get real results. And now, here's your host, Corey Corpodian.
All right, guys, welcome back to the Unleash Success show. Today's episode is very exciting because so many people these days want to work when they want to work wherever they want to work, and even want to work at home. They want to be able to work from home, travel, and just simply enjoy a moment in the now. But the hardest part about getting work, travel, and life into one happy formula is simply many of us don't know how. Lucky for us, our guest today has managed to do all of that. Today we have Jinny Oh. Jinny began her career as an SEO web content writer, and she later migrated to design-focused roles where she oversaw user interface, user experience, project flow, managed brand strategies, and helped launch several startups. She's worked with brands such as Burt's Bees, Dollar Shave Club, and Geico. In June 2016, while still working as a full-time freelancer, Jinny founded Wander, which is a user interface, user experience company. She founded this company with travel in mind because you travel to 30 different countries. And based on her company and love of being a digital nomad, she believes that creativity flow from beautiful places rather than being trapped inside an office cubicle. So today that belief has helped her create Wander into a full service design and development company with a remote global team. You've worked with startups in over 250 companies all over the world, most of which have gone on to raise VC capital based on your guys' designs. And in just 18 months, broke over $1 million in gross revenue. Jinny, thanks so much for coming on today's show.
Thanks for having me here.
So I want to get started with initially your experience and how you got started in freelancing and where all this entrepreneurial journey really began for you.
Sure. So I began freelancing right after grad school. For me, I was already accustomed to traveling during my time in grad school. We went to 3 different countries. So every semester we were moving around. So we started out in France, then we went to China, and then we were in the Midwest. And so by the time I graduated, I was so used to moving around that when I was done with the program, I almost had this withdrawal that like, oh gosh, where am I going next? Like why stop now? So I never intended to get a full-time job. Everybody else kind of went on to doing recruitment, and I was that one black sheep that was just kind of like, all right guys, like I want to go off, do my own thing and continue traveling. And that's kind of how I ended up freelancing, because I wanted to make sure that I still was living this lifestyle of constantly traveling and moving around. And of course, I can't get a full-time job if I'm doing that. So yeah, that's how I ended up.
So you say you were in a grad program with, and you went to 3 different countries. What grad program was that?
It's called the Global Entrepreneurship Program. So it's a dual degree program with Purdue University and a business school called EM Lyon in France.
Oh, very cool. How'd you get into that?
I was looking through programs that had that international exposure. So that's it was between that school and a school in Spain.
So you went into an entrepreneurship program, got the travel bug, so to speak, and then started moving around. And I know you mentioned that you went to UNC before, and you had started, blogging and doing some SEO-based content writing.
Yeah.
Was that really the start of your entrepreneurial journey, or have you always kind of wanted to start your own business?
So I always wanted to start my own business ever since I was a little girl. I think when I was 9 or 10, I thought I was going to be a fashion designer and start my own clothing line. By the time I got to UNC, I didn't really know exactly what I wanted to do, but I still had that passion that I wanted to be an entrepreneur. So when I was in UNC, I dabbled in things here and there. So I started out building my own website as a freshman, started a blog that happened to become very popular. Went through some trouble with that, and then I did some other ventures, such as selling luxury handbags online and eBay. And I would say those 2 experiences have been pretty important to building this entrepreneurial foundation for me.
Very cool. And so when you started going out of these programs, when you got out at the end, How did you start freelancing? How did you go from graduating, not wanting to get a stay-at-home, or not stay-at-home, but a stay-in-one-place job, and go freelance and create this Wander company?
So everything has been pretty organic. I never said, oh, I'm going to graduate, freelance, and then I'm going to go start my own creative agency. It was never that. It was, I want to travel, and that was my number one, priority. And then from that, it's like, okay, in order to travel, I need to freelance. And while I was freelancing, I was juggling a lot of clients. I was growing that freelancing business. I started contracting out the work, and before I know it, I have a team in front of me. And it got to a point where, okay, I'm no longer a freelancer, I should become a business owner. So then we incorporated June of 2016, and today we're 8 full-time.
Wow.
Yeah.
You make it sound so easy. I find that a lot of people, especially with Instagram, Facebook, social media, they see pictures of people traveling, working, and they go, I want to do that.
Yeah.
How would you suggest somebody start that process? So,
first, find your passion. For me, the design and travel kind of came hand to hand. You can't just pick up your bag and travel all the time. You have to worry about keeping that work consistent flow. So if you like to write, make sure you have a blog and you're showing off your writing portfolio to your clients. I think the important part is to make sure you're working every day, have that consistency, because otherwise, if you're traveling all the time, you might have weeks where you just don't want to work, and if you don't have that consistency built in your lifestyle, then you're going to fall behind, and the clients are going to want to move on to a different freelancer.
Gotcha. So if I wanted to start my own entrepreneur journey, a lot of kids just coming out of college, for instance, they're, don't know what they want to do. They end up taking a job that's maybe a salary for $50,000 a year. I mean, that's a pretty good salary these days, and depending on what their degree was. But they're just like, this is not, I don't feel connected to this. Did you always know that you were in love with design, and that was you were going to design through the UI UX experience, or how did you kind of flame fuel the flame for your passion?
Yeah, so I think I always loved art. So I went to UNC because my parents really pushed it. I always wanted to go to Parsons or RISD, like an art school.
Oh.
I was one of those kids who early on, while everybody was drawing stick figures, I was drawing like full shade and everything. So I did have a natural talent for the arts. So I would say, like, I love design. I didn't know exactly what type of design I was going to go into. So, when I would say a teenager, I thought, like, maybe I'll do architecture or fashion. I just wasn't sure, but I knew design was something that I was, going to do.
Absolutely. I love that. A lot of things in my life, too, have built up an experience where later on in life I ended up using that knowledge, maybe not in the same way that I thought, but I kind of kept pushing it until I got better at it. So I see you kind of keep pushing until you get better at designing. And how did that transfer over into your job now? When you first started looking for, jobs as a freelancer, what did you look for specifically?
I was actually just looking for someone to give me a chance. So my very first job as a freelancer, and I wrote a story about this on my LinkedIn, it's just a short story. The amount of hours I put into it, it ended up that I was getting paid like $4 or $5 per hour.
Wow.
But what was great about that was, someone was willing to give me a shot. I had no reviews on my profile. I started on what was called Odesk, which is now called Upwork. And this person said, okay, here's your task, let's see what you can do. And once I delivered, he wrote me this like long paragraph about how great I was. And that kind of sparked the chain of all the other clients wanting to work with me.
That's awesome. So it's amazing how you put in the work, and even though you weren't getting paid a lot, you put the time in, and then you're rewarded more than you even thought. Right.
And so for me now, when I'm working with contractors, I'm always looking for people who are wanting to go that extra mile because I was in that stage when I started. So I actually don't like it when people are like, oh, I want to be paid $100 per hour, but I don't have the experience. It's like, okay, well, why are you asking me to pay you $100 per hour when you don't have this portfolio built out? So I'm always looking for people who they may not have the experience, but they're willing to go that extra mile.
Yeah, absolutely. What do people say when you ask them that? What's your experience? Why should I pay you that much?
What
do they try and say to you?
Oh, that just because they went through the General Assembly program. So those General Assembly, they teach you how to do design and they teach you how to become a developer. And just because they come out of it, they're like, I think those types of courses teach them like, hey, you should be demanding this salary, but they kind of think a little bit differently.
I agree with you. I think that and that's why I brought that up, is there's a sense of a wrong sense of entitlement almost when kids come out of college or out of a program that they expect to be paid a certain amount because that's kind of what they were told. I got that rude awakening myself when I finished my residency. It just was not making nearly the amount that I thought I would be making. And it's kind of a shock, but I found that if you put in the work and you're willing to go that extra mile, you'll end up getting rewarded a lot more in the meantime.
Definitely.
When you said you had done a blog at UNC, and you wrote about this in one of your LinkedIn posts, which, by the way, was 12 million plus views. So definitely gained some traction. A lot of people could relate to it. I was wondering if you could share that story for us.
Yeah, so this is a story that I've kind of been very quiet about until I guess like this year, and I started to talk about it because it's been something that's been it deep-rootedly hurt me very much. I got to a point where I dropped out of UNC and I came back the next semester. So basically I had a blog and I was talking about my life as a sorority sister, and I went into the details of a little bit about the sorority secrets and what I was experiencing as a freshman, and it was completely anonymous. So it was anonymous. It got very popular very quick, and I didn't think to be more cautious about who I was telling that I was the author. And so I told a couple of sorority sisters, and of course that spread like wildfire, and before I know it, I'm getting threatened left and right. I got slapped with so one of the sororities organization, I don't know what her title would be, but she's kind of like the mother of the sorority.
Okay.
And she was a lawyer, and she said, you better put this blog down or we are going to come down hard on you with slander, liability lawsuits. So in addition to that threat, I also had people physically threaten me as well. And that was not fun. And so I got to a point where I was really depressed. I got to a point where I was crying for weeks. And then I got to a point where I just couldn't cry because I didn't have any emotions left in me. And I said, can I swear? Fuck it. I said, fuck it. And I dropped out of school, packed up all my stuff, and on my way home, that's when I called my parents. I said, hey, I'm coming back. And they're like, oh, great. We miss you. We'd love to see you. And I said, no, I'm coming back for good. They were not happy about that. So I went back home, and that's when I started dabbling with e-commerce because I was bored being at home and being with my parents. And so I was selling basically luxury handbags and luxury goods that were at final sale at 50% off at factory outlet malls, and then selling that on eBay for, 100 to 200% markups.
Wow.
So that's what I was doing at home, and then my parents gave me an ultimatum. They said, you either get out of our house or you go back to school. So the following semester, I went back to school, and I ended up graduating a year early.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. We talked a little bit about this before too, is just in that transitionary period. How did you manage to get the courage to go back to school, especially after people threatened you?
Yeah, it was hard. I still got attacks. When I shared that story on LinkedIn just a few months ago, I had one person who was just out of the blue attacked me. It's like, dude, it's been 6-7 years and you're still holding that against me? Really?
I think too, I praise you for the vulnerability to open up about that and to share that with people, because it's not easy, especially, I mean, when you're young, you're doing things that you don't realize maybe all the full ramifications of your actions, but at the same time, you know, you learned a lot through that process. And that was one of your first entrepreneurial ventures that you did, right? Where you were actually getting paid for the blog. And so it's tough. It wasn't just a blog that you were putting up. I mean, it was also your income. It was your profession in a way. And so those types of failures, though, teach us a lot of valuable lessons. Really, really tough. So I commend you for opening up and being vulnerable about that. Some people do need to learn to let go of grudges a little bit. So in that period of transition, how did you get like the courage though? What did you say to yourself? I mean, I've talked to people who, myself have been depressed before, you know, for years, and other people, how do you get kind of off the couch, get yourself out of the house and get back to life?
It wasn't easy, that's for sure. So like the first few weeks that I was back, I don't think I really left the house. It was just, you know, just being at home, just being with my parents. And it was tough to talk to my parents about it because they don't really understand, like, you know, we all immigrated, so for them there's a cultural gap, there's a generation gap, and so they don't know what a sorority would be, and
they don't even know what sorority is.
They don't know what that is, no.
So they don't understand the culture that goes into it.
So I just kind of explained to them, like, oh, you know, the girls were being mean to me, like that's how I explained it to them.
But it's a lot different, right? I mean, when you're in a fraternity sorority, you're part of a club, you know, you're there for life, so to speak. And a lot of times, I mean, if something negative happens, it can really impact you, and it's almost your identity.
Right.
So that's super tough. Did you just leave it at that with your parents?
I just kind of left it at that, because there was no other way to explain it to them. And I started just distracting myself, and that's kind of how I started, you know, getting myself into e-commerce. Was I got bored. I really just got bored. I got depressed and then I got bored. And I had to do something. So I was trying to find ways to be more productive. I took a course at a nearby community college on how to build like an e-commerce site, and Cool.
There's something too we talked about, which is just this concept that I hear from a lot of millennials in the workforce where they're drifting or floating. Get a job for a year or two, not connected with it, and you said you had experienced something like that for a while where you're just kind of not sure what you're doing. Navigate us through that. Did you just keep trying things, or how did you get out of that?
Definitely. I think from when I started UNC until about a year and a half ago, I feel like I've just been in this long floating transition.
Just until a year and a half ago, basically when Wander started.
Exactly. I think now I'm so passionate about what I do, and I have a very clear vision of where I want to take Wander. But until that, I had that almost like an epiphany. I had no idea what I wanted to do. Even though I was freelancing, even though I was doing things here and there, it was always this floating transition because I was always kind of waiting for that next opportunity to come. And I realized, you know, I can't just wait around for that opportunity to come. I just gotta keep working at what I like and what I'm passionate about, and eventually that does become your passion, and that's what will pave the way to, you know, what you're meant to be doing. I don't know if that makes any
total sense. Actually, I love the way you said that, because it's really a lot of times what I've been doing in life hasn't always been fully aligned with what I want, and then I try a bunch of different things, and then I kind of just keep working at it, almost complete it, get some results, and then decide whether I want to keep going with it. And eventually, you just keep going with something that it really becomes your passion and purpose. So how long was that period at UNC to just a year and a half ago? How many years is that?
It's about 6-7 years.
6-7 years. Yeah, just to give perspective to people, it's not 6-7 months of floating where I'm like, I don't know what I want to do. You know, sometimes it takes years for you to really find out what you want. But like you said, just keep working on stuff that you do like, and actually eventually that paves the way for something like Wander.
Right.
So let's go into Wander a little bit. You started that in June 2016.
Yeah. So that was like the legal date that we.
Legal date, right? Okay, but you've kind of been building up, and you've been building your team out a little bit. But legal date of incorporation. You've got 8 full-time employees, but how many other independent contractors come work for you guys?
20, I would say.
20, right? So you guys have quite a thriving business. Walk us through the steps of how you've built the business and grown it and recruited people to come work for you as well as your clients.
Sure. So with my clients, I would say that most of it was coming through Upwork. So I had a freelancer profile, started building the reviews, and people just wanted to work with me. And we have a 100% success rating on Upwork. And then when I was making that transition from being a freelancer to a business owner, I had to transition that profile as well, because it's no longer me doing the projects, it's a whole team. So we had to find other other sales funnels as well. We've tried everything. We've tried Yelp, that doesn't work. We've tried a little bit of cold outreach as well, that doesn't work. And we realized that even though we work remotely, people still value the face-to-face. So we do a lot of conferences and events, and that's how we've been able to get a lot of the larger clients, and then they start referring. Now I'm getting a lot of new clients through LinkedIn because of the post mainly.
Oh, wow. Yeah. I mean, 12 plus million views gets a little bit of attention. You said conferences and events. What do you mean by that?
So January we went to CES, March we're going to...
So attending these events, and you guys set up a booth?
Yes, so half and half, it depends on the conference. So all the Web Summit and it's what do we call it, like subsidiary events, we do booths for all of them because they're very startup focused. Right. Much larger events like CES and South by we'll just attend.
Great, very cool. Let's talk about that remote job. To a lot of people, even me sometimes, that's completely foreign, to never have a home base, to always be traveling. How do you balance travel, work, life, and make this into a success formula?
Yeah, consistency. It's like all about consistency. So even if I'm traveling, we make sure that, we kind of enforce this in our team, between 9 a.m. and noon Pacific time, no matter what time zone you're in, you better be online and be working, or at least be available if we're contacting.
9 a.m. and 12 Pacific time.
Yeah, so it's only 3 hours, Monday to Friday.
I was just in Thailand, though. It was like 13-hour difference, so sometimes getting a little dicey, right? Yeah.
So I have family in Korea, and I'll go there twice a year, and man, those weeks are so tough. Because I'll be up at I think it starts at 2 or 3 in the morning, and then I'm up till 6
But you still are up?
Of course. It's the rule that we're enforcing to everybody. You have the freedom, but so in order to give that freedom to everyone, we also have to have some structure.
Yeah, absolutely. I hear the phrase, I'm reminded of it, discipline equals freedom.
Yeah.
The more discipline you give, you're going to work these hours, now you have free time outside of that to do whatever you want. Yeah. It's pretty cool. How do you guys, I like the hours, the consistency in hours. How do you manage people? A lot of people in corporate jobs who maybe even have the ability to work remote, a lot of times they're told, they're not productive, they don't get as much done, they're lazy, they're not going to be paid to work, they're just going to be sitting at home kind of watching TV. Have you ever found that with people you employ?
Yes and no. So when we hire someone, we always start them off as a contractor before we offer any kind of full-time with them. And all the things that you just said, I do try to debunk them, because when you give people the freedom to be remote, they actually become a lot more productive. Because let's say that there's a guy that we just hired and he wants to live out of Thailand. He's going to make sure that he crams in all the work, all the things that he has to produce, and then he's going to go off surfing for the day or something. And the other thing is, when you give someone responsibility of handling a big account, or giving them a client that you really trust, and you give that trust to them, they're going to deliver. They really are. And so, yes, we've had some trouble with contractors that didn't work out, but in terms of people that we work with on a daily basis, no, they're amazing. They're my dream team.
That's awesome. So you kind of bring them on as a part-time independent contractor for a little bit, test them out, make sure they've got the discipline to actually get the job done and the loyalty and everything and the work ethic, and then you hire them on.
Exactly.
It's a smart way to do it. Is there anything that you tell, your people, because everybody goes through ups and downs, right? Where sometimes we're more productive, and then sometimes we're not so productive. Is there anything you tell your people specifically to kind of stay focused on the work at hand?
Not so much, because I think they know, like when we're about to give them a full-time offer, they know that like we're not always going to be there overseeing their work.
So they have a lot of autonomy.
They have a lot of autonomy, yeah.
That's nice. I mean, a lot of people want that independence, especially if you're talking about travel and working. You want to be free to do whatever you want. I wonder how, as somebody, do you look for people who have leadership qualities when you promote them to this position, or do they just enjoy getting the job from you and then doing the work?
So it depends on the role. So if they're client-facing, then yes, we're looking for someone who can be a leader, who can think strategically. But if we're hiring for, like a user experience design or a developer, we just need to make sure that they get the work done and done on time with high quality.
Yeah, and let's talk about that user UI UX interface, because that's a user interface, user experience. Can you explain to us how that differs from things just like simple web design and app development?
Sure. So it encompasses app development and web design. So user interface is kind of like the skin. So whatever you see on an app, like, oh, it looks pretty, like that's user interface. User experience is a lot more about the strategy and of how that app was designed or developed. So it's the skeleton. So let's say you came to me and said, I have an app idea. As a user experience designer, I'm mapping out the entire concept, what's your vision for 5 to 10 years from now, and then what can we build today? And mapping out all the flows, all what the user is actually going to experience in the app. That's what I'm designing out. I'm working with visual designers, I'm working with developers, I'm working with the client. So the experience designer has to encompass all of that.
Well, do you have an example of an app that you guys have developed or a program that you guys use to, how you do it better than everybody else in a way?
What do you mean?
Like how just a simple app that's just an app design as opposed to really creating the experience. How do you get that experience involved?
Oh, a lot of testing. So we really focus on market research and market testing. So that kind of makes us different from other creative agencies that just kind of put a pretty skin or a branding on a website or an app design. We kind of take the next step further, which is every time we produce design, we go into testing right away. So 1 week of design followed by 1 week of testing. And this is real, live testing with people who are in that target market. So let's say, we're creating an app for orthodontists. We'll have a whole lineup of orthodontists to test this new app with.
Do you guys go out looking for these people?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. We scrape their emails.
So that's very interesting in the testing aspect of it. You talk about being very innovative in your space. What does innovation mean for you, and how do you apply it to your business?
Yeah, so I guess innovation is trying to move forward with what the future is going to want. So for us, we're innovating our workplace. More people are wanting to go remote. More people are wanting to become freelancer, and we're making sure that we can accommodate for that. And I think that's the way that we're innovating, because for me, when you're working in the creative space, you have to explore, you have to experience new things. You can't just be cooped up in an office 9 to 5 and expect to produce something great, So I encourage everybody that works at Wander, go travel, go take a week off, go see some new things.
Have you ever heard of flow state?
No.
There's they actually wrote a book on it. It was called Stealing Fire, and they talk about getting into flow, which is kind of like you get into a state where things just start to happen for you because you put in so much time and effort and practice, and it's really like a creativity flow where you're more productive, you're more creative, you're just at your best in that flow. It sounds like traveling sometimes. It puts you in a state where you can, expand your mind and be more creative and be at your best.
Right.
I'm just curious, is like any specific travel time that or that you've been to 30, 40 countries, what was your favorite trip that you took, and how did you bring something from, your experience into your workplace?
Yeah, Colombia is my favorite place.
Okay, cool.
It's definitely like on my top 3, and I loved it for a few reasons. For one, I spent like 2.5 months just backpacking through the entire country, and when I was doing the backpacking trip, that's around the time that Wander came to be as well.
Oh, nice.
And it was just, I think that's when I realized like I didn't want to be a freelancer. Like I wanted to do something more, which is to build a legacy, build a company, and teach other people to do what I'm doing.
Wow.
Yeah.
And that was during your backpacking trip?
Yes. Yeah.
I recently went to Thailand, as I told you, and it was amazing how getting outside my bubble, getting into a new experience, allowed my mind to calm down and almost free my mind to think differently.
Of course.
Just to think outside the box. And it's crazy because I end up thinking a lot about work eventually at the end. You have all these amazing experiences, but then I go back to more deeply inside myself, and suddenly there's a calmness and peace, and I feel more focused, and things just kind of line up. You know what? This is what I'm going to do. And it happened to be at the end of 2017, so it was, okay, this is what 2018 is going to focus on for me. But I found that traveling really allows you to break outside, experience new things, and really expand your mind to be able to make new connections.
Definitely. Like, some people meditate, and for us, we travel. Yeah,
that's awesome. I love traveling. It's a lot of fun, and Thailand and Vietnam are amazing. Yeah. Definitely a great experience. So we talk a lot about action and how 80% of our results come from 20% of the actions we take.
Yeah.
So you've got a lot of different things you've done, but what would you say if someone wanted to go into a remote job? Mm-hmm. What's one action that they can take?
So one action, if you want to just be completely remote, you got to build a brand for yourself. Definitely. Start with building a website. It's really not that hard. You can use WordPress or Squarespace. Make sure that your name is out there. People want to know who's producing the work. Second, start signing up for freelancing websites such as Upwork, freelancer.com. I think there's like remote.com as well. So I think that's really important, just building your brand to start off.
You actually have your own website for you and also one for your company as well. Yeah. Did you find that website helped you build your brand?
So that personal website kind of came secondary. So I actually had my travel blog website before Wander came. So people would go there to learn more about who I was. So they learned that I'm one, a traveler, and then two, like, okay, this girl can write, and then three, like, oh, okay, her website looks kind of decent, like she could probably do some web design. Yeah. So that's kind of where it started. And then I think I had a very basic personal branding website, but it was just like, hey, this is who I am. And then the Wander website came, and then the one that you probably just recently saw, that's recently new.
Yeah. Oh, very cool.
Yeah.
So definitely build your own brand. Sign up for some of those freelancing websites. There's a lot of people who use the word entrepreneur these days.
Yeah.
And a little overused sometimes. Yeah. What does entrepreneur or entrepreneurship mean to you? You've been through a whole program for it. And then, what kind of advice can you give to really the young people out there that are looking to become an entrepreneur? I mean, you're pretty young yourself too, but a lot of people use that phrase and they're not in entrepreneurship. Right. So what does it mean to you, and then what kind of advice do you give to them?
Yeah, so entrepreneur to me totally equals risk. What are you giving up? What's your opportunity cost? Are you willing to take the risk to go on this long journey? Because entrepreneurship is a journey. It's not like, oh, I'm going to start a business and it's like a check mark. No, it's an entire journey that you're taking, and there's going to be obstacles thrown your way, and you're willing to risk what you have now for that unknown.
I love it. I mean, it's absolutely true. People really underestimate the amount of risk that they're willing to take. Sometimes they think they're like, oh yeah, I can do it, and then when push comes to shove, something stops them. The fear of loss, like losing something. Maybe it's the comfort of even being at home or in a secure job. Right. How many people I know were like, yeah, well, I gotta take this because it's guaranteed that I make this. yeah, sure, you're guaranteed to make $50,000 a year, but if you do this other job, you have no idea how much you're going to make.
You might be losing.
Yeah, you could be losing, yeah. Which actually reminds me of something we'll talk about in a sec with you. It's super funny, but you might even be losing, but you're creating your own life, you're creating your freedom, and you have the ability to make even more.
Right.
So bringing that up, that is such a funny thing. I just remember talking about it earlier. You, at one point, when you were first starting out with Wander, didn't have a lot of cash flow. And so you were struggling to pay all your employees. Yeah. How did you handle that?
So we're like just getting out of that financial, crisis, I would say. For me, it was, I didn't ever want to worry my team. That was the number one thing. Like, I wanted to make sure that they were happy, that all the stress was on me, all the burdens on me. Took a lot of credit card debt. I took out a small loan, and just kept pushing forward. There were days where I was just like, oh my gosh, I couldn't even stare at my bank account because it really, really scared me. But at the back of my head, it was just one of those things that, and this sounds so crazy, I always knew, okay, it's a struggle now, but we're producing really amazing work. It's just gonna be for a few months where I have to have this burden on my shoulders. We're gonna be okay. It sounds really crazy, but I always kind of told myself that because I really believed it. We were gonna be okay. The cash was coming in. It was just that we were burning a little bit quicker than what we were bringing in.
Yeah, so in order to pay, so you had several employees at this point.
Yeah.
And you had money come in, but it was coming in too slow, so you actually had to pay them using a credit card?
I had to, yeah. And this was right around the time where this was a year ago, or actually a little less than a year ago. I think we had me plus one or two plus people, and we brought on 2 additional full-time plus a bunch of part-time contractors. So we were growing, and that's what was breaking my bank was we were going too fast, and I didn't have that cash flow or that cash savings to pay them right away. Okay,
so I gotta ask, you don't have a lot of cash,
no.
And you're paying people on credit card,
yep.
And you decide to bring on 2 more people.
Yeah.
That's risk.
That is risk.
Was it just the belief that what you were doing was going to work? How did you do that?
Yeah.
How did you make that decision?
I mean, for one, we had the demand, so we knew that we had to staff really quickly because we were getting all of these requests from prospects and clients. So I'm not going to tell them oh, sorry, we can't do your work for a month. I had to staff right away.
Right.
But the issue there is that the clients don't pay until the job is done, but I still got to pay my guys. So that's where the gap was.
So how many months did it take to kind of settle that all in?
Oof, that was between, I would say, April until October was the worst.
Wow.
And then from October onwards, that's when I was getting out of that slowly. So.
That's awesome. I mean, what an obstacle to overcome though, and to put that much out there of your own, because this is all on you.
Yeah.
If it fails, it's all your fault.
Of course.
One thing too I love that you said is the belief that you had in the back of your head, that you knew this was always going to work. I talk a lot about beliefs, and people have different beliefs about everything in life. Some people, some of us used to believe Santa Claus was real, and unfortunately he's not. Well, maybe he is, I don't know. I won't judge anybody's beliefs, but beliefs can change, and I love that belief because a lot of people, and I used to have a belief that kind of life was always messed up, it was screwed up, and so something bad was always going to happen. I kind of believe more along the lines you do now, where if I know in my heart that something is going to happen, or I can make it happen, or I believe that as long as I'm willing to work hard enough, I can make it happen, I can succeed. I think that belief right there for you really helped you push through those struggling times.
Yeah.
And when I heard that, I just, I was like, yes, that's it. That's a winning mindset that you have right there. And we talked a little bit about this too before, but is there any daily habit that you have where, or maybe something that you do? You talk about consistency.
Yeah.
Anything else that you do all the time that really reinforces these types of beliefs, this mindset to keep pushing forward?
I don't really have a good advice for that, just because I like consistency, but I'm not a creature of habit. Mm-hmm. So I don't do anything on a daily that gives me that belief. I just think overall over the course of time of all the things that I went through, it's just that belief just kind of gets built stronger and stronger. So every time I hit like a down point, you just have to keep like thinking and move towards a brighter future. I know that sounds really cheesy, but there's nothing that I would
but
say.
It works.
It works, yeah.
Right? And that's the difference. I think that's the big thing for me, is that it works. And then people who think the other way wonder why their life's not working the way they want.
Right.
You said something about a mindset. You know, you kind of have like a daily mindset.
Right.
What is the mindset that you have when you wake up in the morning?
Just being happy, like, you know, I have mornings where I wake up and I'm like, fuck, like this is gonna be a long day. But, you know, like you have to be thankful, like, okay, why do I have a long day? Well, I have a long day because clients want to work with me. And that's a really good place to be in life, where people are needing me to like help them. Like for me, I never always had this mindset because I went through cycles of depression. It was really bad, but you know, when you're able to get up in the morning and just kind of think like, you know, let me just get through this day. Like we're working one step at a time for something much bigger than myself, and bigger than ourselves. So
I'm curious to know too, is just the depression and that feeling when you're floating. And is there something you would tell your younger self to help kind of kick your ass into gear and develop that mindset sooner? What would you say to yourself?
Just thought everything's gonna be okay. You know, there were days where I just couldn't get out of bed. I had really bad thoughts where it's like, okay, well, what do I have to live for? If I can tell my younger self, like, hey, everything's gonna be okay, I think that would have been really nice to have.
Yeah. And it's funny how now, looking back, you realize that everything is okay.
Everything is okay, yeah. I mean, we still go through struggles, but, you know, for the most part, like, I'm the happiest I've ever been. And a lot of that comes from clarity and being happy about what I'm doing every day. I think when I was a student, I wasn't happy going to class. I wasn't learning anything that I wanted to learn. So there was depression there. You know, even like 2 years ago, it was hard to get out of bed because it's like, I'm doing this work for their clients, but for what? Like, just so that I can exchange my time for a little bit of cash. Like but now it's like, okay, we're still kind of doing that, but I have a vision for where I want to take Wander. So that's what's bringing happiness and clarity in my life.
Yeah, I like that a lot. I'm curious to know too, just what would you say would be the biggest mistake? Maybe you've even made it, but for people who are trying to go remote and be more entrepreneurial, that they should avoid doing?
Don't miss client deadlines.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
That is so important because if you piss them off, like they're probably not going to want to work with you if you're missing a deadline.
Seems simple enough, but absolutely.
It happens because like even the contractors that we hire, like we'll tell them, don't miss client deadlines.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
That is so important because if you piss them off, like they're probably not going to want to work with you if you're missing a deadline.
Seems simple enough, but absolutely.
It happens because like even the contractors that we hire, like we'll tell them it's due Monday. They'll deliver on Tuesday, and then like I'll go check what they were doing on Instagram. Oh, looks like you've been partying all weekend. Why haven't you delivered on Monday? Like people find out.
Totally.
So don't miss deadlines.
Okay, very good, very good. And then one last thing about just action and what can we do today even? If I want to go, join an Upwork team, what's something I should do right now to set myself up for success so that I can maybe go travel for a couple months and still get paid doing something I enjoy?
Yeah, building your portfolio is very important. So whatever it is that you're doing, let's say you wanted to be a voice actor, so you don't have to physically be at the location. Make sure you're building up that portfolio, same with design, same with writing, whatever it is that you're doing that you want to do remotely. Make sure you have a solid portfolio. What I did was I built my portfolios bit by bit by working with the clients at a much lower price point. So, they weren't expecting to be completely wowed. So I was able to slowly build my portfolio while taking a smaller pay. So, either go that route, or if you want to start off wanting to get paid $100 per hour, then make sure you have a solid portfolio.
Right.
So.
that sense of entitlement that you've earned it, but first maybe work for it, then you can command that price. And you recently told me a little bit about how you guys have, you kind of were in that hustling stage where you were doing a lot of work for less expensive and realized you were putting in so much time and effort that you guys weren't really making any money as a business. And, but once you've established yourself and your clients want your work, you guys were able to increase your prices and rightfully so to meet industry standards, right? It's been an amazing journey for you guys, and I'm really excited to see what you do with Wanderer in the future. I know that a lot of people out there want to travel, want to be able to work, and combine that all, and you've done a fantastic job of that. So how can we find you online?
So you can visit my personal website at jinnyo.com, and then our company website, which is wandereragency.com. And then there's LinkedIn, Instagram. We don't use Twitter. There's Facebook. Those links are on those websites.
Awesome. And then for our last question, it's just, everybody's got their success that they built up to now, but we're always working on something beyond ourselves. And so what is your next level of success?
So for me, I would love to do more public speaking and sharing my story. I haven't written a blog for quite a while, so I want to start putting myself out there and sharing the story of my journey by either doing public speaking or blogging. So that's kind of my next milestone.
That's awesome. Yeah. Congrats. Thank you very much for coming on the show.
Thank you.
If you guys enjoyed the show and learned something of value, the one ask that we have is please go subscribe. If you'd like to leave us a 5-star rating and review, that definitely helps us get our message out there. Because each week I'm going to interview amazing people, and I want to be able to give you more and more tools and strategies that get you real results. Feel free to connect with me on Facebook or Instagram at Corey Corpodian, or just visit the website at unleashsuccess.com. Remember, knowing is not enough. Knowledge alone is not power. Action is. Because action is the only way to get the results you want in life and truly live the life of your dreams. So go take some action. Subscribe to the podcast and get ready to unleash success in you.